Welcome to welcome to our conversation this evening. My name is Robert Kabshinga, and I am excited to have this conversation because it's one of the most important conversations we can possibly ever have as citizens. And I have the right people in front of me today to discuss how Uganda can increase its tax revenue by increasing domestic revenue mobilization. As I told you, my name is Robert Kabshinga, and sitting right across from me, I'm Paul Lakuma, who is Advisor Tax, Ministry of Finance. I know him in other capacities that I will not disclose, but I am happy to have you, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you, listeners.
Joseph Okello, Supervisor, Research, Uganda Revenue Authority. Joseph, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
And Silva Namunane, who is the tax economist at the World Bank. Silva, always a pleasure having to converse with you. The only problem is they never give us enough time for us to exhaust our ideas and thoughts, but we're here now.
Thank you, Robert. I'm hoping today we'll have a good time and let's see what comes out of it.
You guys have to decide because me, I can talk throughout. Okay, but I think the reason that this issue has become even more urgent is that government of Uganda, or like other African countries now, has to find new ways of raising money to fund itself. Currently, it's largely debt, some tax, and a bit of overseas development assistance. So, Silva, just to clarify, is that a correct description of the budget structure or the revenue structure?
Perhaps finance folks have been able to do that in a better way. But I can also literally tell you that when you look at a government is what they call budget constraint, or in the simplest terms, look at your budget as a household.
Yes.
On one side, you're going to have your revenue streams, and then on the other side, you're going to have your spending side. So on the revenue streams of the government,
Yes,
that is why you have you're going to have tax revenue, and then you're going to have new borrowing, and then you're going to also have what you've borrowed already as a stock of debt. So all these things that you kind of look at on the one side of it. So you're going to either borrow, or you'll get some grants, or you're going to ideally raise revenue. And then on the other side, that's where you kind of have all the spending.
Right. So I want to turn to Paul. And Paul, I'm just going to give my own context. It's about a couple of months ago, I sat in a similar debate about the financing of health. And it was another report from, the World Bank, and they were talking about the need to raise, I think the expenditure is from, I can't remember the exact figure, that was $16 or but to 29 to meet the funding gap that has arisen as a result of the new developments. So things have happened in the world. Do you want to give us some understanding? What is it that is affecting access to financing for development, especially for countries like ours, like Uganda?
Yeah, I'll start domestically. We have some aspirations as a country, which are documented in several government documents. Well, one of them is NDP4.
NDP4.
Yeah. Then we have the tenfold growth to grow the economy to 500 billion.
How feasible is that?
We'll go back at that story for another bit, right? To achieve that, as Siva mentioned, that's all expenditure. You need to fund to reduce the infrastructure deficit. The health system has to be robust. The education system has to be good enough to.
You must have the human capital.
You must have the human capital. So to fund that, you need some money. So you need to raise the money using the portfolio which Silva has spoken about. One is debt, and the easiest and the most sustainable and the most reliable is tax. However, in our context, our tax to GDP is low, as was shown earlier today. It's about 13-14% of gross domestic product. This is lower than regional average or sub-Saharan average or any other average which we are supposed to be. So
What should be our aspiration?
According to the several documents the government has, it should be about 18-20%.
Yeah, that would be a desirable position.
That would be able to sustainably finance some of the aspirations we have. However, there has been the rise of the far right regimes in the West, and a lot of nationalism and a lot of inward-looking governments in the West, which have cut the other sources of financing, particularly grants and even loans. There's so much loan out there because we are competing for the same tranche of money. But very many countries are competing for the same tranche of money. So the cost of that money has gone up, and that emphasizes the need for domestic resource mobilization, and that has seen a rise since the late 2000s, a rise of something you've had, the medium-term revenue strategies or domestic revenue mobilization strategies.
What actually, Paul, let me just sort of just simplify for us, as I don't want to say it in the local language. Break for us. Right. But what does domestic revenue mobilization mean?
But Robert, maybe before we get to domestic revenue mobilization, there's one thing that probably Paul, I know he probably thought about it and might have skipped. There's this whole thing that goes on globally. When there's geopolitical tensions, everybody's kind of looking inward.
True.
Yeah, they start to build up defense systems. So whatever money they would have put out to be able to provide aid to support low-income countries, they end up pulling back because they're putting that money into building their own defense systems to defend against war. When war comes to your house, your doorstep, you have to prepare to defend yourself, in a sense.
The truth of the matter is that there are actual wars. I mean, there's a war in Ukraine, there's a war in Europe. The threat of Russia to the Europeans is real. So they are looking at reinforcing their defense systems. Then when Trump came into office, he threatened to withdraw American security guarantees. So that also means that they've got to increase their spending. So that also has taken money away.
Yeah.
But also the uncertainty seems to have affected the financial markets in terms of who do they lend, who can they lend to, do they want to lend at this point in time? Would you say that's the case?
Yeah, particularly with China. China now has kind of pulled back a little bit in terms of the amount of financial resources they can put out there for developing countries. Why? Because of one, reputation of a lot of financial reputation of some of the countries they were lending to.
You've gone to the finger.
Yeah, some countries have affected their perception, the Chinese perception of those countries. I don't want to name the countries, but some of the countries have restructured their debt. When you do that, that does affect how much money you can gain access to in the international markets. Yeah. You asked me earlier what domestic revenue mobilization is. To me, it's simply revenue sovereignty. It's a method of seeking revenue sovereignty by raising the resources using domestic efforts.
And that's taxation, really.
And that is mostly taxation. There can be a mineral side and non-tax revenue, but as it was mentioned earlier today, those sources can be watered down, to use the exact word. Tax seems to be the most sustainable.
So this is when I turn to Silver. We have the advantage that you are a Ugandan. That's our first advantage.
It should be a bad thing or a good thing.
No, it's a good thing.
On what I have to say.
No, because you understand the context, right? But you also worked on the report.
Yes.
And here we're talking about the 25th edition of the Uganda Economic Update. And in there, you are specifically addressing the question of domestic revenue mobilization, which Paul has spoken to. What do you want, first of all, let's start with the people of Uganda, right, to be aware of What's our new reality? Because we can also talk many things, but what's our reality? Number two, how should, in your opinion, the government of Uganda respond to that reality?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the realities of this country are quite many, and the horrors that people live with every day are quite many. Some people go home and housing is poor, but they never probably speak about it.
Yeah.
They will have a small shelter that they live in, and they feel like it's a good enough home. But sometimes it is good enough. It's a good enough home if that's all you know.
Until it rains.
But even if that's all you know, even if it's bad, you'll never know it's bad because that's all you have.
Exactly.
So, but if we are really looking at building a country to probably perhaps a tenfold growth that everybody talks about,
Yeah.
well, that means that if you have a business of 100 million, you're thinking what, 1 billion, tenfold. If you have it's a very big improvement, and that is going to come at a cost. And if people are really serious about transforming the country to become what they think the country should become, then somebody has to finance it.
Right.
Yeah. So literally, to be able to get to higher income, upper middle income, this just kind of means that, the average income of every other Ugandan goes up. The realities that you probably live with is that sometimes there's going to be people where you see their income's gone up quite significantly, and then you're wondering what's going on with everybody else.
Yeah.
So we kind of have to live in a world where we know that potentially there could be inequality already that is higher than what we see. But if we don't check those problems, they become apparent. Then you kind of have a community, you have a society that is basically discontent because there are very few haves and so many have-nots.
Exactly.
And then you don't want to end up we don't have to go very far to find some of those examples where the inequality is very pronounced, and you have all this, you could have all this income and others don't. The consequence is cause social unrest, and we don't want to get there.
Yes.
So we kind of have to put in place policies that basically allow inclusive growth, if you want.
Okay.
One of them. And not just growth on paper. It has to be growth in people's incomes that is actually visible in their day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Better infrastructure, better housing, better schooling, and all these things. These things are pretty much like a given. It's a basic need to a country that basically its own government needs to be able to place those things there.
Right.
But those things come at a cost. Now, wherever we are today, the tax GDP ratio is quite. People talk about tax GDP ratio, but what is tax GDP ratio really? We're just kind of looking at.
And why is it an important indicator? Why is it such an important statistical figure, if I may put it that? Because somebody said, these guys economists like to throw around words, GDP, tax to income ratio, and all. Well, why are these things important?
Really, if you're going to say you're doing well or you're doing badly, there has to be a benchmark.
Okay.
Yeah, there has to be something that you measure yourself on, and you say, fine, I'm doing all right. I need to be doing better for the size of the country that I have, and for the income levels of my people. I need to be raising at least a certain percentage in terms of revenue. Now, from where we stand today,
in order to deliver development,
in order to be able to deliver development and to be able to sustainably fund that development, there's evidence, and all these research people that all the researchers do is good economists who are very good at these things.
Yeah.
The benchmark is about 12.45, but they add in a buffer to make it 15%, because that's a tipping point to be able to sustainably finance your growth. Uganda has not gotten to the 15% tipping point. Now, after it gets beyond the 15%, because there are shocks, there are things like COVID happen, things like climate shocks happen. You need to have a buffer to be able to deal with those shocks.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't build your revenues up, then you cannot sustainably meet the public demand. So we might be saying probably there's not enough roads, enough hospitals. Even if they're there, the quality is not good, but the revenues are not sufficient. There has to be at least that minimum that we hit. Now, the revenue potential for Uganda, it's probably about 17. The estimates that we put out as a World Bank, they're probably out there. They put Uganda at about 17%. 17%. Tax GDP should be about 17%.
Based on the current,
given the structure of the economy, the way we have it today. Yes.
Not one we want to have.
Now, if you're going to look at the economy that we want to have, when that economy gets there, of course, as the economy grows, we reevaluate some of these things and then put out other projections based on new data that we'll have gotten that takes into account the development that has happened in the country. Yeah.
So, okay, I'll come back to the report.
Because there's a second part to your question.
Yes.
The second part of your question is that what are we thinking, and what should the government possibly do to be able to address people's realities? First of all, there are things like education and all these things and infrastructure. Those are meant to be done naturally. But maybe to just refocus the discussion to today's debate, mostly on purpose of raising revenue, there could be options that can be done. Yeah. We'll probably get into some of them in a little bit of detail, but if you're discussing I'll start again, go back to the housing example, and people earn some income when you go to work. You get your 1 million shillings. Maybe back in 10 years ago, Uganda rent Chisengediro Chirika.
Yes.
We kind of say the language that everybody understands. Chisengediro Chirika. Or you're in a
One-room rental.
yes, one-room rental. That's what we call it. If not, you go to probably somewhere in Nansen or something. You find a small room that you rent. You get up in the morning, you get on a border or something, get in taxi, get to work. You paid you 1 million back then in 10 years ago. Looks like good income, right?
Yes.
Yeah. A couple of years, inflation, they always come up and put a report. And I would want people to pay attention to these numbers. Inflation is 5%, 3%. What does that mean for your income? Every year, these prices keep going up. The wages in this country are not indexed for inflation. So your wages are remaining the same. So whatever you were paying.
So you're saying I have 1 million shillings I am earning.
Yes.
Every year my cost of living goes up by 5% or
Well,
3%.
assuming that inflation is 5% or 3%.
Yes.
On average. And the basket of goods that they choose to, which include basic things that every day that the person would need.
So if I want to live well, so initially my 1 million is okay, but as this thing goes up by 5%, it becomes difficult for me to afford those basic things until my income is not sufficient.
Yes, over and over again. So the bottom line is that 10 years down the road, your 1 million is not sufficient enough to basically even sustain the life you had 10 years ago.
It is no longer the 1 million it was 10 years
No,
ago.
your time value for money, not at all. So if the wages are not quite indexed on inflation, not moving up,
Yeah.
and then you have the people who are really, really bad off. Those are the ones at the very, very bottom. They basically, you work at your gig, you get 300K, you get 400K. And that's what you have to live in. That now there you can't go for Singapore even. You get one room. Small one, even if not you get a roommate. That stuff happens. That's how people live in this country anyway. Most of them. And then they get up to hustle every day to be able to make things work. Now, if there could be something that could be done from the tax side, provide relief at least, these people earn the least amount of money, if you want. In a sense that they push up the exemption threshold from the current 230,000 to roughly maybe the proposal put out roughly about 400 or 300 and something.
Yeah.
Such that if you're getting your 350 or 300 or 320, you're not paying any tax on it, because really, what are you going to live on in this couple of hours today anyway, in another town? Now, that has implications, because you're providing relief. If you're providing relief, you're kind of eating into your tax base in a sense. So, personal income taxes, or whatever they call pay as you earn, has to have a progressive tax structure.
Okay.
In a sense that the more you earn, the more you pay. And we shall not really deny this. A couple of people have kind of gotten very good jobs in this country and basically earn very good money. And largely they should be paying relatively slightly more. So those people can shoulder some part of that burden. In a sense, if you
Of the lower end.
Yes, of the lower end. Provide relief that you exempt at the lower end and increase the burden, push the burden a little bit up. Now, people would argue that's a bit too much, but how much money is it really if you look at these kinds of proposals we're putting out? If you're still earning, let's go back to the 1 million. You're only paying an additional 15,000 every month. If you're earning 9 million, that's the people will say some money, decent money. Then maybe you can contribute another 450 even a month.
9 million.
Yeah. Thank you. Additional. No, now it's
Okay.
additional.
So
ideally
above your 40%.
Yes. Now, what this does is provides relief to the low income persons. It ensures that the personal income tax system is updated very often, and then and it's kind of updated, but also provides some bit of additional revenue to the government to be able to fund the things that we're hoping that the country would become in a couple of years from now. So that's one option, but we'll probably get back into others. Over to you, Robert.
So, Joseph, I guess the question becomes, what are and I'll stick purely to the administrative issues here, that you guys face in order to implement some of these recommendations? I mean, if you're thinking in a boardroom, it is different from when you're on the streets trying to collect this money. What is it expandable? Is it even as the structure is today? Is it possible to do these things? Because Silva is saying there is an additional 4% or 3.5%, which even without doing very much can be collected.
Yeah, thanks so much, Robert. And I just want to take the conversation back to the way it started.
Yeah.
Silva started and said you need to look at it as a family or your household.
Yeah.
Yet. And in your household, you'll basically look for all ways of basically financing it. And these finances should be coming from different sources, especially when you're constrained. So the same way the government operates, government is not basically a business entity. Government does not do...
Government is not a business.
Yeah, is not a business. And so,
Even Bill Clinton has learned that.
Yeah.
He was the first guy to try and push that line, private
absolutely.
sector, yeah.
And so government will actually have to do certain things to bring in revenue, basically to finance its current and recurrent expenditures
Yeah.
on a day-to-day basis. So one of the ways they do that is basically taxation.
Yes.
And it will always have to find a way of expanding this tax base, in spite of all the challenges that, of which I'll actually mention some of them. Issues of registration. First of all, there's a low level of taxpayer registration. One, for a population of over about 40 million, we're about 40 million Ugandans, right?
No, actually, you're being conservative. Let's be boy, medium. The 45 workers are.
I mean, let's be about you, but still, that's about 40 to 45 million Ugandans. And our register is about 7 million. So the question is, where are the other people? I know some could be children, some are at school and all that.
I think for me, the best comparison should be the voter register. All the voters should be registered for tax purposes. Because they're 18 million.
And they're above 18 also.
Yeah, good. Huge.
Above 18 years.
Yeah.
So the thing is, as an administrator, so why are we not registering, or why are we not bringing some of these people to on the tax bracket? Some of the reasons are heavily political. You can see we are moving towards the election period, and we just have to be a little careful with some of
the enforcement
with the enforcement methods.
We're talking enforcement, but look, after the election, someone has to pick up the check, right?
Exactly, and it's good to just kick the can down there. Anyway, continue, Joseph.
So one, we basically need to expand expand the registration, bringing a number of taxpayers on the tax bracket. But it's also the challenges worsened by the issues of informality. Our informality is estimated at about 50%. You can imagine that's a very high level of informality. So how then does URA basically bring these guys into, make them more formal? Personally, URA is basically looking at, first of all, tax education, expanding issues of expanding tax education to these entities, and having a number of tax outreaches to these people. 2, 3, we're basically also trying to work with what I'd call the different entities, where like collecting data from National Water, from Umeme, and all that.
Tried going to banks and we rioted.
Actually, you should not riot. The people who are rioting are now these high-income people, the ones who riot, because if you really have a lot of money and you're keeping in the bank account, there should be a mechanism to tax high net worth individuals. But I'll leave instead of take up.
The problem is, I'll stay with you, Nathan Silva, and I'll spare Joseph this problem. The problem is that there's so much discretion in determining a high net worth individual.
And that discretion should go away.
Yeah, but
the rules have to be clear.
Yeah, but you see, the problem is that unfortunately, we have a bad structured economy. High net worth individuals are the political authorities. They're the ones who are high net worth. So how are you going to if you don't go after them, you will go after pseudo or imagined high net worth individuals. You will be taxing the same people who are already paying on income tax.
Now, maybe we need to rally our politicians and tell them that they need to contribute the same basket that they're taking from.
Which you like. Let me just go back to this. Never mind. Yeah, but you were saying that
I was saying we basically have to, we're trying to bring the different players into the tax bracket by...
But Joseph, I want to actually stay with you on that. Because for me, what I find frustrating is that you guys do outreach programs. You guys are trying to bring people into the formal economy. But again, you're constrained. Why do I say you're constrained? There are conversations that URA will not be allowed to have. So you have to bring in the political establishment. And yet, I wanted to say this earlier in our earlier discussion that you see, unless so the Ministry of Finance and its outreach program is a disaster, and they need to know that they're really, really bad at engaging with the public. And yet they're the ones responsible. No, I'm saying this, I can say that because I know that URA is very good at engaging with the public because they know what the problem is. But you're constrained in terms of the mandate of what you can discuss and what you can concede on. When you push URA, they tell you we are policy implementers because the issues that we are raising are policy issues.
Rightly so.
Yes, but the policymakers, where do we find them? They are moving. They drive us off roads. They are hidden in offices that are difficult to access. Paul, now I can't find. Those days I just walked to EPRC. Now But the real issue for me, and I'm not asking this as a question, I'm making it as a statement that the stakeholder engagement of URA is very limited to the technical aspects. Do this, comply with this, do this. This is EFRIS. It should be like this. But the URA can't get involved in discussing whether EFRIS or not. The URA can't get involved in whether to exempt people or not. It can only discuss the way it manages the administrative aspects.
Bring finance on the
Total
table.
expenditure. Yes, the expenditure.
So
Now comes Paul.
yeah, we are working on that. We have been doing stakeholder engagement or stakeholder management for a while now, but maybe we have not been doing it.
No, this is my suggestion to you, Paul.
Yeah.
I actually think that the URA engagement department, the I don't know what they call it, I think tax education. Should actually, when they go out, they should be involved in the policy somehow, because their infrastructure of public engagement is very good.
Yeah,
But I think you guys at finance can ride on that and use it to engage the public on policy matters.
Yeah, but there has been debates also whether someone who collects taxes should actually carry out tax education.
I have
And we are studying models of how to go about that. One of the outcomes of that study may be to outsource the services of tax education, because also someone who collects, someone who's viewed as
Paul, it's a misnomer. It's actually tax education should be separated from tax outreach. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Because tax education assumes a certain lack of knowledge in the tax system.
Mm-hmm.
So that you can outsource to professionals who can teach it in many ways.
Yep.
But to know what I need to know and to engage me in a discussion on a tax policy is a different approach and requires political engagement.
Yeah, and it's good we're having this conversation, because now you have created a distinction between tax education and tax outreach, and that is a learning process which never ends. And those are some of the lessons we want to pick from people like you and the general public to understand and contextualize the tax system and put it in the context of the cultural experiences we go through every day as Ugandans, not as a foreign tax system. But I was saying that we engage in a broad study, both at URA and Ministry of Finance, to try to understand how we are going to do tax outreach and tax education.
Okay.
We think we have not been doing it the right way. That's what we think. And and that's why when we engage with people like you, we want to pick on those models and understand how do we deliver outreach and education.
And for me, I think, by the way, you don't even need to look very far, Paul.
Yep.
The government of Uganda, I believe the government of Uganda shortchanges itself so much. Sometimes it's even laughable. We look at you and we laugh when we're outside. Because you already have working examples in other departments that can be used. I'll give you it's nothing to do with you. Explain to me how and why the driving permit department.
Yeah, that's an overused example. Because driving, I know people like
This, no, I'm not even using you as an example. No, driving summits and national IDs.
Yeah.
Same function. Okay, let me not use that.
Yeah.
URSB.
Yeah, but national ID is universal infrastructure. Is an infrastructure supposed to be delivered universally? Driver license is a user choice.
I understand.
Not everybody in Uganda is a driver.
Okay, everybody in Uganda has a mobile phone.
Not everybody has a driver license, or not everybody drives. It's a small proportion.
No, but I'm saying.
But a national ID has to be
No,
delivered.
but actually, no,
everywhere.
okay, so fine. Maybe that's a particularly good example.
Yeah.
But in terms of communication, if you look at some of the successful projects you've undertaken in terms of public engagement, I'll
Yeah.
tell you, one of the finest hours of the president was the first lockdown of COVID.
Yeah.
That was his finest hour in terms of communication. I mean, he was on top of the whole issue. He knew when the timing was right. He had full attention.
Yep.
So you can look at some of those examples, even questions of public health. We've been very successful as a government agent in engaging with the public. So I think you can look to those as examples of public engagement rather than outsourcing, because public health lost it the moment they started engaging private sector individuals, who then it became about money. But I digress. All I am saying is, you have like this national consultative, what do you call it? The one which happens between now and end of November for the budget.
Yeah. The budget process.
Yeah. Can't you have a parallel one together with URA in partnership on specifically tax,
Yeah,
which lasts that long?
And that's why the director earlier in this morning, the director of economic affairs pointed out that now we do have a tax policy making process, which is a structured approach in how to make a tax policy, and stakeholder engagement, outreach, and education is a integral part of that tax making process. And we have started it well. That on September 17th, we had an engagement where we had a press conference to kick off the process. So we are trying to do things differently now. We accept that we have been doing something, but we could have done better. And we think from this year, we will do much better in terms of outreach, education, and reaching out.
But maybe, Robert, I could chip in here. Taxes are a very difficult thing. Even a businessman who has probably been running around, if he hears the word taxes, the guy is going to run away. Yeah. And if he sees a URL officer show up in a uniform and everything, the guy just gets frightened. But he also doesn't know that as a taxpayer, he should have access to probably what I call it a tax code, or the book that lays out the rules. If you earn income, how much of that income are you meant to be paying to URA? Say that when a URA officer comes and says, give me 7 million, you tell him, but how can I give you 7 million when my sales are 4 million? Doesn't make sense. So some of these things are basically the simple things that could come out through that process. If you earn if your turnover is 10 million, you have expenses incurred in probably raising that money. Those are meant to be taken as deductible. Now, if you're not keeping those proper records, sometimes you can get into problems.
But Silva, there's a disconnect that I want us to reconnect.
Right.
The debate about tax tends to be narrow.
Okay.
Narrow in the sense that it restricts itself to the collection, and then narrows itself further by sticking to the administrative aspects.
Right.
The question I would put to both you and Paul, and I want to spare Joseph this because of his position. Because I put to Paul, how do we involve the politicians in this outreach engagement with the public about tax? And how do we make the linkage between that and service delivery? Because that's where the rubber fails to meet the road. And there are arguments you can make. I mean, there are things we take for granted in this country. One of them is the fact that we have security and we sleep. Somebody is paying for that. Now, nobody has a sense of the investment required in just securing the country and making sure it is stable. And then talk to some of this. But why can't we engage with the political establishments and get them involved in this tax outreach issue?
Yeah, like Silva pointed out, tax is painful, and politicians, more often than not, don't like to involve themselves in tax discussions because
It's a very unpopular.
it's an unpopular. You may lose votes if you start discussing. If you look at a lot of the manifestos which are out there right now for the different political parties which are contesting for the next general election, you find a lot of them have avoided the hard talk and the tax issue, which was mentioned by the professor earlier this morning. But again, the issue of political economy and why we need to engage the politicians cannot be overemphasized because politicians have legitimacy. They have something we technical people don't have.
True.
They connect policy to the people, to the masses.
And we elect them.
And they have the platform. They can go to churches, they can go to the mosque, they can have radio talk shows to talk to the citizenry about taxation matter. That is something we would like to see going forward. And as Minister of Finance, we have been...
And also you avoid contradiction because the worst thing is for a technical officer,
Yeah.
you as the tax advisor, to say something, then tomorrow the Prime Minister makes a statement completely contradicting you.
Yeah, exactly.
That undermines the initiative.
Yeah. Good enough. Going forward, we have been engaging politicians as Ministry of Finance. URA has also been having, I think the CG has a breakfast meeting with MPs, which I attended this year. Those are some of the processes and the platforms we are trying to utilize to bring politicians on board on tax matters to ease the linkage between policy and citizenry, which we feel the missing link here is the politician. But of course, also the politicians have to be more accountable going forward to account for every coin paid by the citizenry. Even though tax is, you're not supposed to get equal services to what you paid, but there should be a sense of accountability,
I think
broadly and collectively.
Paul and Silver, I think for the politicians, it's more than just accountability. It's also the fact that they have exempted themselves.
Maybe, I don't know if you want to get to the exemption first. Probably we kind of exploit the whole aspect of a social contract.
Sure.
A politician's job is probably way more than just accounting for the money. It is meant to be the connecting link in terms of policy discussions on matters tax. If you're a minister in the Ministry of Finance, you should be able to explain tax to your people.
True.
At least the bare minimum you can do is explain that, look, if you earn your income, this is how you're going to be taxed. At bare minimum. But beyond
committees that
committee members
consume resources. Yeah.
But even beyond that, you need to be able to make the connection because literally you're meant to be going to your constituents. You need to be able to make the connection between the policy you've designed and the revenue you've raised and how much you've been able to deliver, at least in your constituency, in terms of service delivery. Yeah. Because these guys come from everywhere around the country. And they're basically in close contact with all the voters, and on ground on where these services are arguably meant to be delivered.
Yeah.
So they have their particular role in this, and it's a core pillar of domestic revenue mobilization. There has to be a social contract that the politician and the citizens hold together. Now, the whole infrastructure of public service is just meant to basically be like a foundation that allows these guys to do exactly that.
It's the scaffolding,
yes,
on which you advance the agenda of tax collection and the social contract. They're not the ones responsible.
Yeah, and if you see countries, if you look at countries where there's trust between politicians and citizenry, those taxes tend to have higher tax yields.
And you're building the trust by
social cohesion. Yes.
Yeah, because people, even though tax is painful, people are willing to pay if there is an underground railway station, if there's a standard gauge railway, if the school is good enough, the health sector is good. People will be willing to pay 40-50% of their income into the tax. But if they don't see those services, then no one will be willing. You have to really use the enforcement methods to get the tax.
That's why Joseph comes in.
Yes. Yeah, I just wanted to say actually that quite a lot is being done, especially right now. Euro has been working closely with these politicians. We've actually started moving into churches. There are the days you'll find you are basically moving together with the church leaders, preaching out taxes in these places. But again, we have the high net worth office, high net worth individual office at the URA.
Yeah.
And this office is basically supporting on that. We basically identifying the influential politicians who are high net worth. And of course, some of them eventually get out of this the high net worth list, but we continue working with them to ensure that the tax outreach.
They become broke, or politics seems to be expensive in this country.
No, but so they eventually support basically with the outreach program.
But I wanted to stay with you because I wanted to steer this conversation in the direction that the economic update is recommending. Just describe for us, when we talk about a narrow tax base, beyond just the numbers you described, the 5 million to the 250, who is carrying, from the technical standpoint, who is carrying the tax burden of this country? Who are the social categories that are really paying for our upkeep for this 13%?
Wow, very interesting question. And I'll come from a standpoint of a paper that we did some time back, looking at the pay, how the pay structure is looking like. So in our structure, we basically found out that most of the people who are actually paying the holding the burden of pay are people who are the middle income earners.
Okay.
So we've the structure is the pay structure itself is a little progressive.
Yes.
But when you look at the people who are basically at the top, what we'd call the top 1%.
Yes.
First of all, there are few. Of course, the rate is high on them, and they contribute significantly.
Right.
But the burden, the actual tax burden, is basically around the middle income earners.
Who are in formal employment.
Yeah, who are formally employed, basically formally employed. And that's why we try to push so much with expanding this base. We know that there's so many people out there who are still informal, who can be brought into the bracket. Yeah.
Which brings me to silver.
Yes.
Because the update makes very specific recommendations on how we can do that. Would you want to take us through what they're proposing?
Yes, I could probably come in. Now, what kind of, Joseph Reid is quite accurate. I think the middle class kind of seems to shoulder most of that burden.
Yeah.
But I think where things get a little bit complicated, you would expect also that if you look at, say, for example, corporate income tax, because that's where one of the biggest assessments, at least in the report, is focusing on this perpetual 10-year tax holiday, which if you invest $150,000 USD, you largely become, in what they call qualifying sectors, you become eligible for a tax holiday. Maybe after 9 years, or in the 10th year, you can make another investment, then you become again eligible, because the way they propose, the way the exemption is crafted, so you get to be exempt. But now look, the firms that have the ability to do this are the largest businesses we have in this country. Now, this is where the loophole comes in the design system that is basically decides to purge itself of the potential taxpayers that are going to ideally help you raise more revenue. So if you're going to ideally exempt those kinds of people who are basically have the highest ability to pay, then you're just kind of digging a pit for your own self. So you're kind of saying 10-year tax holiday exempt, you're making, the objectives. You're meant to encourage jobs, you're meant to encourage investment. But our findings don't seem to be very strong on that front. There could be some jobs, but that's
Stated benefits are not coming.
not all of them. Some of them, you could say number of jobs and maybe better quality jobs. But look, the revenue forward gone, at least according to the government's own reports, about 100 billion shillings. That's a lot of money to leave on the table, at least, and slightly it's the largest companies. Now, the smaller companies also complain. No, and they say we don't want to really be the ones paying. And then, of course, this budget, if everybody was paying attention, they introduced another exemption of another 3 years. If you're a startup, 500 million, they call it a startup. It's a small company. That's what I would describe it. But, you're meant to be contributing the best. Now, look, we're purging the tail ends of the bases. The smallest side, the smallest businesses, the startups, and the largest. So you're pushing, you're kind of remaining with a very small base in here. That's why we're saying, if you keep purging your own tax base, you might as well forget about corporate income tax. And it becomes quite difficult if the plan is to basically be able to move to the tenfold growth that we're calling it. And then we're busy, and then there's partly some aspects that are purging our own existing tax base that is very small and cannot sustain the development that we want to basically attain. So that's why we're saying some of these things need to come to the table. So there are a couple of other policy options, including how well you can tax high net worth individuals. The issues are around tracking these individuals and being able to keep an inventory of what they own and how they're able to afford all these things, and then be able to do the right assessment. Now, some of these proposals can come into play on the policy side, but also other aspects on the compliance end that could ideally help the government raise as much revenue as they have to. But they have to be willing to do it, including removing some of the provisions that exempt MPs and all these things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But yeah, Paul, yeah, I have a question for you, but you proceed.
Yeah. What I would say to that is that for the small business, the 3-year tax holiday is, I think, a strategy borrowed from Mexico. Yeah, I think it was Mexico, where those small business, when they were given exemptions, they were able to register both legally and fiscally. And as you know, the definition of informality is not registered legally. That is with a registration bureau or local government or a license by local authority. And fiscally is just being registered with the revenue authority. So if you want to create that register, there has to be some incentive for the small businesses to come, because we're not going to give it to someone who is informal. You must get these 2 types of registration for you to qualify.
I know, Paul, let me say 3 years. Let me stay with you on that.
Sure.
If the objective is to formalize informality,
Yeah.
I would actually not even create an incentive. I would create a disincentive.
To be informal.
Yes.
What is that? How would
You
you?
will not have access to certain services if you remain informal. One, no, I'm saying
The 3 year is a service. If you look at it,
saying, instead of trying to incentivize them by saying, I'll give you 3 years of this. I said, no, if you don't formalize your existence as a business, no bank account, no trade license, you will not do business, basically. You can't even rent a shop. Now, do you know what that means? That means that suddenly I can't do what I thought I want to do. So I have no choice but to go and get that sorted out. How did we all get national IDs? Nobody came to our houses and put guns to our heads. No, they created a disincentive because they said, if you don't have an ID, I'll give you one of what I consider one of the biggest bungles in that initiative. This thing of mobile phones. They said, if you don't register your mobile phone, your line will be disconnected. The response,
Everybody did.
who bungled it? The security guys themselves. They didn't want to register, then they created exemptions, then we did nothing. So sometimes I am arguing, if you want formality, then you create a disincentive for me being informal. And one of the disincentives is to say you will not have access to banking services. You can't do financial transactions. Why did you all guys run to go and comply with FIA and get off the grey list? It's a disincentive created by the international community. So if we want formality, we create a disincentive for informality. Everyone will turn up and register. What they don't, and once you do that, then from there you start. But there is an element of, I don't want to use the word dishonesty. There's a false promise, actually, that's the right word, about this incentive that if I become an formal, I'll get this. I look at it, I look at my benefits, this side, what you're promising, I'd rather stay on this side.
Largely because the institutional framework allows you to stay on the other side.
Exactly.
But so the solution is not tax exemption in a sense.
The solution for me is a disincentive that we will exclude you from being a citizen if you don't want. Because why today does everyone have a birth certificate? Because you must get a national ID. Why must you get a national ID? Because you will be disenfranchised if you don't have a national ID. So for me, the starting place would be everybody who has a trading license with the KCCA should be a formal business.
Yeah.
But I'm not the...
Yeah, but and that's why I love this conversation, because you've brought out some good points which we will take in our assessment. The other thing is, we, as the director mentioned earlier in the morning, that we have a tax expenditure rationalization plan which is going to published under governance framework, which Silva actually worked on it partly before he left.
Robert, I've worked on so many things with this guy. See,
Yes. which Silver worked on before he left. And part of that governance framework is to improve the governance of tax expenditure, to make sure businesses which are given these exemptions and incentives account for what they are given and fulfill the objectives which are laid down in the tax code. One of them being employment, investment, value addition, and exports, and so forth and so on. But also, as it was mentioned, we have also a rationalization program which will review, and that review will include the evidence presented by Silva this morning, whether to terminate or grandfather the tax holidays and other incentives. So that is a process also which is going to take place at the ministry.
But Paul, and I'll say this, then I'll have one last question, and then both, at least the two of you, Joseph may not, but I was in my previous life involved in a lot of public debate, and I remember two distinct eras of public debate. The first one was what we call fondly the Mutevile era, one from 1987, when they changed policy direction. Then the second one was what I call the privatization era. And now that one I was very actively involved because I was already in the public debate space. What I find and I'm just making this observation, what I find frustrating today is that the quality of public discourse has deteriorated to just either sloganeering or being politically correct. Now, some of the places where discussions are taking place and becoming policy are not even formal places where these debates. So my observation is that the biggest disservice to things like the economic update, what you spoke earlier about tax engagement, is that the nature of public discourse is so politicized now. For politicking, not even ideological. We're not even discussing political economy here. It's so ideological. So today you guys will go and have a correct technical debate that says this makes sense from a tax point of view. Then some people who have better access to where power lies will go and have a completely different conversation informed by totally different thought processes, and they'll carry the day. So my point to you is, yes, is there a way we can open up and go back to a less politicized and a more enlightened public discourse about the preferences of policy direction and get really competent people? Because now I hear people talking about silver. I mean, I'll tell you this. I look at a person, he's talking about tenfold growth, and he doesn't even understand the word tenfold. He's talking about tenfold growth. He's talking about value addition. You look at him and you ask him, okay, let me even make this worse. Why is full figure the person who is carrying your discourse about the economic policies? So I feel that we are doing ourselves a disservice in these public debates, that the quality of people that are representing the public debate, especially the government policy debates, are not up to the task of debating, not because they're bad people, but they don't understand what they're talking about. So we've ceded the public space for debate. And so I feel that is a major disservice, because for me, the climax of that was looking at that conversation in Kololo about EFRIS. You could see people who hadn't understood it. There was a total breakdown of what public discourse should be. How did we get to the point where you take the president of the Republic of Uganda to meet directly with these guys? What kind of debate can you have in such a context? Wouldn't there have been political leaders to do political work in advance? Couldn't these things have been managed earlier? I just feel that the space has been left wide open.
Yeah, I don't want to go into the the politics of the presidency.
Let me
but what I would say is that this thing is not unique to Uganda. I think media has been democratized now. We have TikTok. We have
anarchy. So let's move.
We have Facebook. Exactly, anarchy. like everyone now is an actor. Initially, it was Hollywood.
There was also gatekeeping.
Yeah,
That
and
was
there was
media.
gatekeeping. Now everyone can do things which were not
Even Bad Black has an opinion on the economy.
exactly. Yeah, so those are things we have to live with, but that is not to say that we cannot regroup as intellectuals, as
Okay, that's
as intellectuals, and also
to reclaim some of this.
reclaim some of this space while also observing the democracy which has been created. I think it's for it's a force for good. Social media and the new media is a force for good. It has opened up spaces. It has opened up outlets for people who never had access to media before.
And it has made feedback less costly.
Less costly, yeah. So there are advantages of that, though we as the intellectuals also can reclaim our space and redirect policy in the way how it should be for the betterment of humankind and Ugandans in this particular case.
So my final point to all three of you is quite simple. And it's really not. When I read what Silva has put in the Uganda Economic Update edition about domestic revenue mobilization, I feel that the debate about tax in Uganda, irrespective of who it is too narrow. Narrow in the sense that it is always about URA. And I feel that the politicians and the supervisors of URA opportunistically leave it that way so that URA is the lightning rod for them. They don't want to take responsibility. As long as URA is being hammered, they are okay. They don't have to be accountable for it. But actually, for me, URA can only administer tax revenue collection in an existing context. It cannot create a new well. And yet, for me, I'm saying for us to expand the tax base, yes, there are things we can do, the ones you've mentioned, like review, exemptions, laws, and so on. But what is the very nature of our economic activity and what does it generate in real terms? That for me has always been, we need a debate around how do you, let me give an example. Let me use my example of the sector I understand.
Sophistication. Yeah, so you're going there.
Yeah, and I'm saying, who sits down and studies this informality? How does it behave? And therefore, how can we mimic it to make more money? The other day, somebody said borders are now the second largest employer. They're driving GDP, but it's not. How are they driving GDP? Do we know? Is it just that people sit on bikes and ride, or are they part of what we should debate as a logistics industry? But for me, I go to coffee, which I understand best. Right now, the reason we're making money from coffee is because the prices are good. It has nothing to do with us.
Our ingenuity, yeah.
No. But yet we can do certain things.
10 million bags.
Actually, I think that's the wrong pursuit.
Okay.
I actually think that's the wrong pursuit. And I've told my coffee friends this. I've said, you don't need to set a target like that. Do you know the target you should set?
Output per tree.
Thank you very much. You should say Uganda should move from 0.5, half a kilo of FAQ per tree to 1 kilo to 3 kilos. Do you know what that does? It means, 1, agronomic practices. 2, you check the seedlings you're using. 3, you're looking for inputs. 4, there's a huge issue in the coffee sector which we have not addressed. It's called stamping. Our trees are old. That's why they are very low productivity.
In around 30 years.
Some are even older. Like in the Uganda area, many of those trees, even Bugisu, many of those trees are really, really old. So if you told, and it's easier for a farmer to understand moving from 0.5 of a kilo to a kilo because it's immediate to him. But you tell him 20 million bags, he doesn't make the connection between 20 million bags. Now, the government of Uganda, and now I'm addressing you, Paul, the government of Uganda should not set a target based on bags. The government of Uganda should set a target based on revenue.
Okay.
Because you can understand that in the country there are maybe 30 million trees of coffee. Out of 30 million trees of coffee, I can make $10 billion a year. Then you work backwards, because how do you make the money? For instance, what kind of treatment do you give coffee exporters? How do you manage financing? How do you de-risk the financing? How do you invest in marketing? That's the value chain.
But Robert, you're preempting the discussion for the next Uganda economic update. We're going to discuss smart agriculture. You're already getting that before we even finish.
I've written your report.
So can we finish today before we get into smart agriculture?
The point I was trying.
Well taken.
No, but the point I was trying to make is, can we look beyond tax administration and revenue and look at how is this country actually generating wealth?
The economic structure, yeah.
So, are there things that we need to look at in the economic structure, even if we're getting more money, say, for instance, from re-export of gold, or we're going to deal with extractives? I feel that debate is being lost in the administrative issues of, should there be tax, what are they called, receipts? There's the one which they put stamps. It won't increase your tax revenue significantly.
No, Robert, you raise very pertinent issues, and I quite honestly do agree with you. That is why we are trying this as at least the World Bank, when we have these economic updates, to get out and provide data. Because if you look at the update, it has one part that basically discusses the structure of the economy and the structural challenges that Uganda faces, that hopefully, when addressed, can basically unlock the tax potential for the country. So now, however, most of these debates, these reports, once we prepare them, sometimes they end up being left somewhere, or the dissemination is not quite broad enough to be able to, or engagement, if you want to call it engagement, to be able to reach the people. So everybody that listens, or probably everyone that will listen and watch us a little bit later today, take a chance, interest yourself in reading some of this material that we put out there. There is useful information that is in there that can help you engage meaningfully with at least with your government, and then be able to go with facts onto them. Because the guys who work in government are very smart people. You go there, when you don't have your facts, you kind of end up in a very bad place. So, but what we can do as development partners is we do the analytics for you. We put out the report for you. Take the time, a few minutes, a few evenings, a Saturday evening before you go to do whatever you do on Saturday evening. Read 2 paragraphs or whatever. Before you know it, you finish the report, and then you have the data to be able to arguably engage well with the government. I'll be very disappointed if I hear some names I've heard today talk about policy. I don't understand how we get there, but I hope we don't let the debate to kind of get to those people. The numbers are here. I'm sure some people listening and they can do these things, but probably are too busy looking for money and finding ways to survive. But take a minute, read the reports, find the actual figures about your own country, and engage in a more meaningful way with your government. And then you're going to have meaningful debate, and then you're going to help contribute to whatever has to happen in this country. Thank you.
Yeah, but also
You'll be.
I would urge the.
No, I want you to be last. I want Joseph to say something very, very quickly, because in the earlier conversation, he did mention about research work that they do as URA, and some of the information and where it is that some of us who no longer have very much to do with ourselves can go and interest ourselves in the. So where do we find the kind of studies you've done and how useful they are?
The research is available on the public domain, basically online.
That's on the URA website. Anywhere, yeah.
Anywhere.
So that's
with
true.
Google. You basically just have to Google an area of, that you're interested in. You'll find some of these papers popping out.
Yeah.
But you can also look out for people that we've worked with, who we work with quite closely. The ICTD, that's International Center of Tax and Development. You'll find papers there. You'll go to International Growth Center. You'll find papers that are there. If you go to United Nations University, World Institute of Tax and Development, you'll find also some papers there. But also on the URA website, when you go to research, we always publish papers that we do annually in what we call the research bulletin. So you have this kind of information available in these websites. Yeah, quite a lot of that. Yeah, but we also, World Bank has done quite a lot of work. That information, it's when you search in the website, you'll find quite a number of them.
Right.
And yeah, you can actually walk into URA. We shall actually be able to.
Walking into URA is above us soldiers with guns. Oh,
yeah.
Finalize it for us.
Yeah, just to yes, these reports are available, but if we could also, as you know, with the new media, we also in the policy space must adapt to the new media. So there's need to break down these reports and put them in the new media, TikTok, X. This a space such as this is needed. Such discussions, they are easier to listen to than to read a whole volume of text.
6-8 pages of Uganda economic update. There's just
So even a professorial person like me, I'm not bragging, reading such reports is quite difficult sometimes. So we need to break them down into the new media, into chewable pieces. Policy briefs like such a report, we can summarize the tax elements into 1 or 2 pages. That will be easier for policymakers. Our politicians don't have even a...
I learned that a long time ago. If
Yeah.
you wanted a politician, you just pick out the things that make him look smart.
Yeah.
3 paragraphs.
Yes.
He goes and reads it and he's fine.
Yeah, so we need also, we as people who develop some of these content, we need to put them in the media, which is more consumed in the life today. We need to put our things in TikTok. We need to put our things in X Space. We need to put our things on Facebook. We need to create smaller policy briefs. We can leave the big report for the professors of
Wonks who...
and such people, and people want to read, but a majority of the people would appreciate a 2-pager out of the 6 to 8 page.
Or even a podcast they listen on their way home.
Yes, yeah. So we need also to invest in those that kind of media.
So, well, first of all, folks, you're listening. The 25th Uganda Economic Update is out, and it's about improving domestic revenue mobilization. This touches you directly. It hits you in the pocket, so you better be interested. And I promise I am going to put up the QR code, so all you have to do is just scan it, and it will take you straight to the report when I do. And I want to thank Paul Lakuma, who is advisor on tax at the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, aka the money will come. Silva Namunani, who is tax economist at the World Bank, and Joseph Okello, who is supervisor research at Uganda Revenue Authority. Guys, I thank you very much for having these conversations with me. I'm a very privileged guy because I get to have some really enlightening conversations with interesting people from all parts of the world, and this forces me to, on a Sunday afternoon, when guys are watching football, I'm reading Uganda Economic Update.
It's good for your brain.
I know, man. Yeah. Especially now at my age, I need to be doing things like this to remain younger. So that's...
But you're still looking younger. I don't know why you think you're
reading economic updates.
You should read more of them then.
Thank you, guys.